strangely strange but oddly normal.
Hi, my name is John Downs and welcome to the Weird Weekend.
Our first speaker of the day is Ol Lewis, although recently he had his name changed via Depot to Smidgen Flufflet. He's going to be talking about how he took his precious monkeys to be joined in a civil partnership. So it's Smidgen Flufflet and his same gender lifestyle choice monkeys.
Right, now to talk about my monkeys. Not really, I'm really here to talk about Welsh lake monsters. And, thank you. I'm here to talk about Welsh lake monsters in folklore and fact. And you'll have to forgive me because I've got quite a bad cough at the moment. So if you hear what sounds like the community hall falling down, it's probably me coughing into the microphone. There's a vast bestiary of Welsh lake monsters, and they range from fantastical creatures, which are almost certainly inventions of folklore, to creatures that are very real monsters and have actually attacked people in the last decade. Most of these animals are hardly heard of outside the Principality of Wales, or if they are heard of, reports are often garbled from bad translation of Welsh folklore and inaccurate interpretations or forged accounts. Now, the strangest of all the monsters of Wales is the Llanhiddyn y Dyr, or water weeper in English. It's said to be a fearsome creature that dwells on the rivers near Bethgelert in North Wales. Which you can see there. That's actually Bethgelert. And the area, as you can see from the picture, is more famed as the supposed final resting place of Gelert, an ever-faithful hound from Welsh folklore who slew a wolf that tried to kill the baby son of a Welsh prince. Now, the prince returned from hunting that day to see the house covered in blood. His son was nowhere to be found. And Gelert was bounding happily over to him, also covered in blood. Now, putting two and two together, the prince ran his sword through Gelert, only to discover the dog's heroism a few minutes later. As he held the dying animal in his arms, the prince, racked with guilt for his rash action, resolved to bury the ever-faithful hound with honours in a grave with a stone monument so that no one would forget the story of Gelert's bravery. Upon this spot was placed a new monument after the tale was popularised by local owners, the Pritchards, in the 18th century. And the village became somewhat of a tourist attraction. Now, it's an interesting story, of course, but what's that got to do with strange beastie that was said to have lived in the nearby River Glassing and Llyn Glas? Well, I'll come to that in a minute. Now, the water leaper was said to have the body of a toad, but a tail instead of hind legs, and wings instead of forelegs. And the leaper's mouth was said to have been large and powerful enough to have dragged sheep under the water hole. But believing the water leaper was certainly strong enough in the 18th century to stop shepherds who were herding their sheep around Llyn Glas from using their dogs around there, because they thought that if one of their animals was herded nearby the water by an overzealous dog and fell in, something would take the leaper and draw it into the icy depths, never to be seen again. Now, the only encounter with the water leaper that's ever been recorded in print took place sometime in the first few decades of the 18th century. A local fisherman called Ivan Owen, but also known as Han, had no awful day's fishing. Now, whenever he cast out that day, something had nibbled at his bait and removed it cleanly from the hook without getting snagged on it or pulling the line. Naturally, if you make a living by fishing, this sort of thing is really, really annoying. And this could test your patience. Now, Han's patience was no exception, and he let fly with a volley of bad and foul language that certainly didn't show the Welsh language in its most poetical light. Now, When Han cast out his line from another spot that he moved on to by a cliff, he felt something actually pulling at his bait, so he pulled back sharply, almost instantly. No, of course, not wanting to lose more of his bait. But having hooked his tormentor, Han had to pull with all his might to get the creature out of the water. When the monster erupted out of the water, it shot off the hook towards the cliff so fast that, according to Han, it dashed so against the cliff that it blazed like lightning. Now, Han later recounted that were it not the Flanagan Dur, then the creature must have been the devil himself. Han claimed that both he and his father before him had seen the water leaper on several occasions and in a number of places along the stretch of water, and was said to scream loudly whenever a fisherman was able to pull it to the surface. And this is actually the River Glasson now. Very pretty picture, very pretty place in fact. I recommend you go there. But where does the story of Gelert, the ever-faithful hound, fit into all this? Well, the person who related Hanlon's tale to John Rees, who printed it in his 1901 book, Celtic Folklore Welsh and Manx, was William Jones, who just happened to be a descendant on his mother's side of the Pritchards, who allegedly invented the tale of Gelert to bring tourists to the English town, English tourists to the town, Welsh town of course. The Pritchard family held regular tall tale-telling nights at their inn, with relatives and friends from Beth Gelert, and the town really got its name from being the gravesite of a Welsh missionary in the 8th century, and also from the nearby parish of Delwidion. Han was regularly in demand for these nights, as he had few equals in the area in his ability to spin yarn, and it was on one of these nights that William Jones first heard Han delivering his tales of his encounters with the water leaper. Now, whether or not the water leaper was only an invention of Han, goodness knows he certainly invented enough folklore and tales. Now, no one can say for certain, but it's not been seen in the area since his tales faded from memory locals. Now, some monsters have been seen over a much wider area than the water leaper. Water horses, for example, have been recorded all over the Celtic world, in Ireland, Scotland, and the Isle of Man, as well as in Wales. In Wales alone, there's numerous examples varying in appearance and intentions. Some water horses are supposed to be friendly to man, helping him out of life-threatening situations, like a water horse that appeared before an old man near the charming named place of Flemingstone. Now, this creature was luminous and took the form of a horse of average size, being rode by a very long-legged man. The water horse guided the man across the marshland near the River Thor, showing him the quick route out of the marsh and where it was safe to tread. Not long after the man had made it safe ground, a freak tide washed in, flooding the marsh, and, had it not been for the horse the man claimed, he would have certainly been drowned. Other water horses in Wales, while not openly benevolent, are said to go out of their way to scare anyone that may be foolish enough to ride them. One such creature was witnessed in Glenleith, near Swansea, and it was by the waterfalls caused by the rivers Pidin, Little Leith, Millet, and Hippisley. A traveller happened upon a magnificent white stallion. Weary from his long journey, after checking there were no other people in the immediate area, the traveller decided to take the animal so that he would be able to undertake the rest of his journey in relative comfort. But nothing could have prepared him for what was going to have happened next. The horse rose into the air and carried the hapless traveller miles away from its destination, as far as Llanddewi Brenin, which you might have heard of from the Little Britain TV series. But I can assure you it is a real town in Wales, before dissipating into mist. Our traveller was quite shaken by all this, and finally arrived at his destination a great deal later than he would have done. All of which probably served him right for being willing to take a horse that wasn't his in the first place. There are other watercourses mentioned in Welsh folklore that are very dangerous, however. One was said to have been in residence around Carmarthen Bay. This grey horse seemed, like most watercourses, indistinguishable from any normal horse, apart from the fact that it did not appear to have an owner, and it was said to wait for any victim gullible enough to fall for its innocent appearance. One such person came in the form of a carter, who scoffed at locals' wariness of the animal, not believing a word of the locals' superstitions, and presumably not wanting to look a gift horse in the mouth. The man decided that he would use the horse to drive his cart, and thereby claim the ownership of the beast. The plan was working perfectly, until the man led his horse to the spot on the shore where he'd found it. The horse ran off into the sea, cart and its driver along with it, and neither was ever seen again. Now, the last place you'd expect to see any aquatic monster is in a capital city. I know London was visited by a stray whale last year, but if folktales are true, then Wales' capital city was once home to something far more unusual. It was said that a great serpent made its home in the River Taff, where it flows through Cardiff before entering Tiger Bay. This gargantuan snake-like beast was said to cause whirlpools in the river by coiling and uncoiling its body in the hope of drawing in fish and any unfortunate swimmers to eat. Now, belief that a serpent inhabited the Taff persisted at least until the Industrial Revolution, because when Cardiff was the largest and most prosperous port in the world, some locals gave out dire warnings that men rerouting a section of the Taff to make way for Cardiff Central Station had best be careful of the serpent. Unfortunately, none of the men rerouting the Taff ever saw anything out of the ordinary, and although small whirlpools and eddies are very occasionally seen in the river north of Cardiff Castle, these are usually attributed to the rise and fall of the water in the River Taff at high and low tide. Since the completion of the Cardiff Bay Barrage in 2002, which flooded the bay to turn it into a non-tidal lagoon, these whirlpools have all but stopped. So, if large snakes ever did cause whirlpools in the Taff, it would seem they moved on long ago. Far stranger than the River Taff monster is another serpentine beast, said to live in or near rivers and waterfalls. Wyvers are winged snakes that come in a vast range of sizes. Our small wyvers are no threat to man, but often said to prey on farm animals to such an extent that they become more of a threat to the farmer's livelihood than foxes. And this habit led to the eradication of wyvers in the Penllyn area of Glamorgan, long before anyone in the rural area knew the animals that were taking all their eggs were anything out of the ordinary. Now, Penllyn at the time was bordered by rivers, marshes and thick woodland, so the hamlets in the area had few visitors and little contact with the outside world. So the farmers did not know that by removing the pests, which as far as they knew were fairly common, that they would be wiping off what could have been a completely new type of animal. Now, when wyvers were larger, however, they were thought to be a threat to man, and take a similar place in Welsh folklore as dragons do in English folklore. Many tales were told of a brave local hero taking it upon himself to slay a wyver with varying degrees of success. The most widely known story is that of the wyver of Penmachno, which, according to the story, led to naming of the Wybenort Valley. This is actually the River Machno here. Now, a wyver had been causing mayhem and eating fish in the River Machno, raiding the farms of nearby Penmachno and killing anyone foolish enough to get in its way. So in desperation, the locals managed to raise quite a substantial reward for anyone who could rid them of the monster. And this caught the attention of a brave and well-respected man in the local area called Owen ap Griffith. Not wanting to go in unprepared, Owen decided to visit a local soothsayer called Rhys Dwyn before he went after the monster, in the hope that the soothsayer might tell him his future and with it how to kill the wyvern. Unfortunately for Owen, Rhys predicted that the monster would bite him. Understandably perturbed by this prediction, Owen went back home downcast. If the beast was to kill him, then he couldn't have much time left in this world, and whatever effort he might try to kill the wyvern would be fruitless. So, in desperation, Owen resolved to test out just how accurate the soothsayer's predictions were. Owen went to see Rhys a second time. This time, he dressed as a tramp and gave a false name in order to fool the soothsayer. When he told Rhys of his intentions, the prediction this time was that he would get a broken neck. Smelling a rat, Owen tested the soothsayer a third time. On this occasion, he dressed as a miller, and Rhys gave him yet another different prediction about the nature of Owen's death, that he would drown as a result of his encounter with the wyvern. Owen tore off his disguise and challenged Rhys as to how he could die in 3 different ways. Unperturbed, Rhys just said, "Time will tell," as Owen scoffed at him and went on his way to do battle with the wyvern. Owen felt that he had exposed Rhys Dwyn as a fraud and that he was destined not to die at all. So, buoyed by this false confidence, Owen did not notice the wyvern's presence until it was too late. The winged snake pounced on him while he was atop a small cliff beside the river Machno and sunk its fangs into his side. In his attempt to pull away, Owen must have slipped, for he fell down the cliff, breaking his neck in the process, to land in the river where his lifeless body was found bloated by the water several days later. Now, for the locals who had been rather fond of Owen, this was the last straw. Every man in the area was rounded up, and they took their bows and any other weapon they could lay their hands on to form a lynch mob to kill the wyvern before things got any worse. When they tracked down the wyvern, they found it sleeping on a ford in the river, and the mob let fly with a hail of arrows all at once. The vanquished beast was washed down the river and never seen again, like most lake monsters who die at seas. Out of all the lake monsters in Britain and Ireland, the evidence for the existence of one outweighs any other. This creature is the Ufank. It has been mentioned in literature in specific locations dating back at least 100 years and has been consistently cited in lakes for at least as long and is still seen at present. Now, the reason the Ufank is classed as a cryptid rather than a known animal is more to do with the fact that over the years, reports have become so garbled by centuries-old mistranslations and lies that rather than it being particularly elusive. According to many accounts in English books on cryptozoology and folklore, the Ufank is some sort of weird hybrid animal that's part crocodile, part beaver, or some sort of aquatic dwarf. So, if one takes only a cursory glance at these descriptions, the creature might sound like a being of pure fantasy, a chimera or a centaur, and not worthy of being taken seriously as a possible flesh and blood animal. However, if you delve into the history of reports of Ufank, you will find that most descriptions given in English books are not based on the actual legends themselves, but rather interpretations of them. One person that's responsible for some of the garbling of the Ufank folklore was the founder of the modern Gossack Bardic Council of Wales, Edward Williams, also known as Iolo Morgennog or Ned of Glamorgan, both of which being his bardic names. Iolo was a true genius, a stonemason, a poet, a political activist, and one of the founders of the Unitarian movement in Wales. And he was fiercely proud of his country, apart from North West Wales. He was also a forger par excellence, and he would often invent history and folklore for his own amusement and to give Wales a more romantic sounding history. Now, one such piece of invented folklore was that of Hugh Garridan's encounter with Nifang. Iola's story was that Nifang lived in Llyn-Barthog in Snowdonia and was lured out of the water by a woman it was attracted to. Now, the woman had been used as bait for Nifang because when it was out of the water, Hugh Garridan pounced on the beast, tying it up in chains to be pulled out of the lake by his 2 oxen. After a great struggle, which led to one ox losing an eye, and the Nifang ripping off the bosom of the woman, Garridan was finally able to pull the Nifang to another lake called Llynwaithinion Plas, where it would be less of a problem to the local population. Iola's fake legend was based on an earlier account found in a 17th century letter written by Edward Floyd, which was republished in the Cambrian Journal in the 19th century. Now, the legend recounted by Edward Floyd was always word for word the same one as Iolo used in the 19th century, but with the omission of Iolo's character, Hugh Garridan, who was in fact a pure invention of Iolo's, and the ox didn't lose an eye. But Edward Floyd comments in the letter that you must understand that some take the Nifang to be a corporal demon, but I am sufficiently satisfied that an animal of the same name, which is called in English a beaver, seeing that the term Celia I Afanc signifies beaver stones. Now, this is the first ever text to ever tie an Afanc an Ifang and beavers together. Afanc actually being the pronunciation of a beaver, Ifang being the pronunciation of the lake monster. And it's true that one of the many variant spellings of Ifang is spelled the same way as the word for beaver in Welsh, which I've said is pronounced Afanc. However, that's a later spelling of the word, and vicious though European may have been, it's extremely doubtful that it would have taken chains and 2 oxen to draw one from a lake, or that one would have been strong enough or vicious enough to tear off part of somebody's body. And in any case, European beavers usually attack with their tails rather than their teeth. So whatever the Ifang in the legend may have been, it probably wasn't a beaver. The humanoid descriptions of Ifang also stem from the spelling of the word, one of which is spelled the same as dwarf in Gaelic. However, as the corresponding Welsh word is cor, it is more like it. It's just a coincidence, because until recent history, there were no standardised spellings in the Welsh language or in Gaelic. So in fact, I've actually managed to track down at least 7 different spellings of the word Ifang. So if we strip away such interpretations from the original tales, we are left with a powerful creature that looks crocodilian in nature. In one Welsh lake, there have been sightings made and legends told of such a creature since the Dark Ages. This is the largest lake in the old kingdom of Brycheiniog, where the rulers wore a Welsh tartan decorated with what is claimed by some to be a depiction of the Ifang of Llyn Cyfredin, and which was where their coronations took place. Llyn Cyfredin was also known as Brecknock Mere or Llangolls Lake, and covers an area of 327 acres. Another historical mention of the Ifang of Llangolls Lake comes in the Lewis Glencothi poem, Ir Afanc. The Afanc am I, who sought for bides in hiding on the edge of the lake, out of the waters of Cyfredin Mere, was not drawn once he got there. So with me, no wain, no oxen want to toil. Me today will draw from here forth. Kofi uses the Ufank of Langors Lake as a device to express his love for the house of a friend he's staying at in a way that would suggest the animal is well known enough by his readers for them to be easily able to relate to the imagery, and that Ufank had been known in the area for a long time. Now, skipping ahead some years, Langors has always been known for its huge fish, as mentioned in Gerald of Wales's travelogue, the description of Wales in the 12th century. But in 1846, a man called Owen landed a monster. Now, any pike over 40 pounds caught in Britain is considered to be massive. And the upper size limit of any pike in the UK is supposedly 47 pounds. But Owen's pike was 68 pounds. Now, skipping closer again to the present, in around 1987, the proprietor of a caravan park near the lake, Mark Tunnicliffe, was on a shoot with a friend of his called Dr. Mike when they met with the Ufank at close quarters. The two men were shooting from a boat in the shallows around the thick reed beds of the lake when all of a sudden all three of their Labradors started barking like crazy. One dog, called Iggy, was considerably braver than the others because he actually jumped out of the boat onto the thing which had caused the disturbance. Iggy landed on a massive pike that had been basking in the reed beds, and the pike promptly darted away very quickly, throwing off the startled dog. Mark Tunnicliffe and Dr. Mike were so fascinated by what they had seen, they both started to keep an eye out for unusual animals and witness reports of them around the lake. Many people in the local area have seen waterfall being taken, and this is not considered unusual at the lake, but something which happened in 1999 was. At the end of August, a man named Darren Blake was attacked by a massive pike, about 5 to 6 foot in length, and deep lacerations in his feet resulted in hospital treatment. Now, larger pike like these can certainly look crocodilian, as this photograph of what the Anglian Times claimed this March was Europe's largest pike shows. Incidentally, it isn't Europe's largest pike. This pike was said to be 60 pounds, and that's 8 pounds lighter than Owen's catch, and pales into insignificance when compared with another one of Mark Tunnicliffe's finds. This pike mask, or skull, measures a whopping 18 inches in length and was found on the shore of Langors Lake only a few years ago. The only other known example of a pike's mask, even approaching the size of Mike's find, is that of the Endrick pike, found in marshes near Loch Lomond, near Loch Lomond, and the Endrick's pike's head measures just under 13 inches, and that is with the flesh still on it. And the Endrick pike was estimated to be 70 pounds in weight. Using a very rough estimating system, the pike that the mask from Langors Lake was once a part of may well have been over 90 pounds. If you thank our giant pike, there must be more than one of them breeding in Langors Lake for them to have stayed with us for over 1,000 years. And I think they'll be the next big cryptozoology success story. I'm leading an expedition to Langors Lake this October, where we hope to discover more about the Ufank there, and if luck is with us, capture on film one of these ginormous pike. Thank you.
Of a sudden interest, if allow just normal pike, would say £48? £47. How long would that be?
At £47, I would say possibly about 4 to 5 foot.
Would, and this is, I really don't know the answer to this one. Charles, are you in here? Charles, if there was a pike of £90, how much more of that would be bulk, or how much more would be net?
Well, most of that weight would be in Europe rather than in actual length. That's just the way that the net weight works. So, I'd be reluctant to give a figure that's more than the amount of weight of the It's pretty big, some of this village from North America, they can reach and they're sister species to the northern pike. They don't reach 90 pounds. It would be long. I don't think it would be that long. I'll get back to
Well, 6 to 8 foot or so would be a ballpark figure. It's actually, as Charles said, it is very hard to estimate the size in length of a pike just from the skull, because there is actually quite some variation in normal sized pike between the ratio of their body, which is actually taken up by the skull, and the rest of the body. But the Langdorf Lake one is huge.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have young Ross with me today. He'll be here later, I hope. We haven't got young Ross, so I haven't got my microphone runner about with. So I'm replacing a 12-year-old runner about with a 50-year-old runner about. My sister's a lovely Graham. So ladies and gentlemen, any other questions for all? Okay, Ronan first, then Mr. Della.
Oh, you'll do, for an encourage. And the Euro Morgano, whom you mentioned, you said he invented true gatto. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Good. Hugh Gaddon, he wasn't entirely invented by Lolo Morgano. Lolo took him from a French word called the Pèlerinage de Charlemagne, and he turned him into a Welsh hero. But of course, it's not a genuine Welsh hero at all. But what I really want to get around to is the idea of the Ivank as a dwarf actually is found in the Middle Ages as well. Peredur goes to fight the Ivank, and the Ivank throws a spear at him, which is something I find remarkably difficult to do. I think the reason is that the word Ivank literally meant something that dwelt in the water originally, and it became sort of, it brought down to the level of a monster rather later. It originally meant any kind of creepy thing that lived in the water. Then it was applied to anything that happened to have a watery habitat, especially the monstrous pike. I'm quite sure that the monstrous pike is the Ivank legend. But I think there is a humanoid connection as well, because the monster fought by Peredur was certainly of a threatening nature, as is anyone who throws a spear at you.
That might also be suffering from slight translation problem as well, because the word Ivank, I mean, there's something like 7 different variant spellings that can be pronounced the same way, and we know that at least one of them is Gaelic for dwarf, because I actually got that from the book.
But the thing is that the Gaelic word actually comes originally from a sort of proto-Celtic word for water. It was a water-dwelling dwarf originally. A dwarf that can inhabit.
As dwarfs always should be.
Was that Paul? Was that you, Robin?
No.
My glasses are so weird. They're supposed to be these refracting things. I can't see who was any one of you guys. Mike Howell.
Found your talk fascinating, by the way. It was extremely impressive. One very quick question. About 10 years ago in the national press there was a story about some sheep killings in the Welsh valleys. And the story was basically that something very strange was killing these sheep and leaving them with 2 puncture marks in the neck.
I think I'm familiar with that one. Is that the one from nearest Newport?
I think the farm or the area was called something like Boggerlog Farm or something like that.
Yes, that's the one I'm
Right.
thinking of.
And I actually interviewed the farmer, he's retired now, and I spoke to his son a few years ago. And it was supposed to be this creature called the Welsh water wolf, right? I'll be honest with you, when you were talking about the wyvern, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up because the parallels were so similar. And you know, I just wondered if you obviously heard of this story. What do you think?
Well, I was actually considering mentioning the Welsh water wolf in with the Wyvern talk. So I think there's a good chance that if the animal is as has been described by some, it could well be the same or a related animal if it is as it's depicted.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well then, I tell you what, Graham, I'm not half as good a microphone runner about it as yours is. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think I was told, because I saw, and also I saw him doing rehearsal a couple of days, it was absolutely fascinating. He is one of British royalties, I think most noted one, common researchers. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend and housemate, Oliver.
Strangely strange, but utterly